You know, the economy often feels so complex, right? All these headlines, the confusing jargon, it feels like this massive, unpredictable thing. But what if I told you that underneath all that noise, it actually works like a pretty simple machine? We're going to break down a powerful way of looking at it, a framework that shows how just a few basic parts, moving over and over in cycles, create all the booms and busts that shape our world.
So this core idea comes from the investor Ray Dalio. And he's not just talking theory here. He argues that this simple, kind of unconventional framework is what he's used to successfully navigate the economic landscape for over 30 years. We're talking about anticipating major crises. It's an incredible tool for cutting through the confusion and seeing what's really going on.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the three big forces that make the whole thing run. Then we're going to zoom way in to look at the absolute basic building block of it all, the transaction, and see how credit fits in. From there, we'll pull back to see the big picture, these huge cycles that this all creates, and then we'll wrap it all up with three simple rules of thumb you can actually use.
All right, let's dive right in. First up, the simple machine. We're going to start with the 30,000-foot view. Forget all the complicated stuff you hear on the news for a second. This model says that really, the entire economy is pushed and pulled by just three fundamental forces. Once you get these three down, you're well on your way to understanding the whole machine.
So what are they? Well, first, you've got productivity growth. That's the slow, steady climb upwards over time. Then, layered right on top of that, is the short-term debt cycle. You've probably felt this one. It lasts about 5 to 8 years. And then, there's the big one, the long-term debt cycle, which unfolds over 75, even 100 years. You put these three things together, and suddenly you have a map, a template that helps you understand what's happening no matter what the headlines say.
Okay, so to really get how those big forces work, we have to zoom in. I mean, way in. We need to look at the absolute smallest part of the economy. Think of it like a single atom. It's the one thing that, when you add it up billions and billions of times, creates, well, everything else.
And that's the transaction. It sounds almost too simple, right? Every single time you buy a coffee, or pay your rent, or buy a share of stock, boom, you just created a transaction. And that's it. The entire massive, complex global economy is nothing more than all of those little transactions added together. It is the ultimate building block.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting. It's how we make those transactions. See, you can use money, actual cash. You hand it over, the deal is done, settled. But most of the time, we use credit. Just think about it like opening a tab at a bar. You're just promising to pay later. In that 1 second, you and the bartender literally created credit out of thin air. For the bartender, it's an asset. They expect your money. For you, it's a liability. You owe them.
And you might be thinking, okay, so what? Well, get this. In an economy like the United States, there's something like $3 trillion in actual physical money floating around. But the amount of credit, it's over $50 trillion. It's huge. That's why credit is the biggest and, honestly, the most important part of the economy. It's also the most volatile part, the bit that swings things around like crazy.
So here's the key. Credit lets us spend more than we earn. And this kicks off a chain reaction. Because remember this simple truth. One person's spending is another person's income. So when I spend more, you earn more. When you earn more, the bank sees you as more creditworthy, so they're willing to lend you more. And then you go out and spend more. You see how that works? It's this powerful self-feeding loop. It's what drives growth, but it's also what creates the cycles.
Okay, so we've got our basic building block, the transaction, and we've got the fuel, which is credit. Now let's see what happens when you put it all together. This is where we see the two big engines that drive everything, productivity and cycles.
First step is productivity. This is the bedrock. Over the long haul, we get smarter, we invent new things, we learn to do more with less. This is that slow, steady, upward line that really, truly improves our lives over generations. It doesn't jump around a lot, but man, it is the foundation of all real, lasting growth.
And this gets to the real key of the whole model. Productivity is what matters most in the long run. But credit? Credit is what matters most in the short run. It's what causes all the drama. See, debt lets us pull future consumption into the present. We can live better than our productivity would suggest for a while, but then we have to pay it back, which forces us to consume less than we produce. And that creates these big swings, these cycles around that nice, steady productivity line.
So let's talk about that first cycle, the one we all know and feel. It's the one that's always in the headlines. People call it the business cycle, and it usually lasts somewhere between 5 and 8 years.
And it's really pretty mechanical. Here's how it goes. First, you get an expansion. Credit is cheap, everyone's borrowing and spending, things are good. But pretty soon, all that spending starts to outrun our ability to actually make stuff. And when that happens, prices go up. That's inflation. Now the central bank sees this and goes, whoa, let's cool this down. So they raise interest rates. That makes borrowing more expensive, people stop spending as much, and the economy shrinks. That's a recession. And once things get bad enough, what does the central bank do? They lower rates again, and the whole dance starts all over.
But here's where things get really, really mind-blowing. If you zoom out, way out, you realize that all those little 5 to 8 year cycles are just small wiggles on a much, much bigger wave, a massive wave that takes 75 to 100 years to play out. This is the long-term debt cycle.
So how does this happen? Well, it's just human nature, really. For decades, people are optimistic. We borrow a little more each year, we spend a little more. We're always pushing the envelope instead of paying things down. And for a long, long time, it seems to work. But underneath the surface, debts are growing way faster than incomes. And eventually, you hit a wall, a breaking point. That's the peak of the long-term cycle. Think 1929, think 2008, same story.
And this is where we hit a massive problem. The system has to deleverage. It has to get rid of all that debt. But the central bank's #1 tool for fixing a recession, lowering interest rates, is useless. Why? Because interest rates are already at zero. They can't go any lower. So, now what? What on earth can you do?
Well, if you look at history, it turns out there are only 4 levers policymakers can pull. Number 1, cut spending. We call that austerity. Number 2, reduce the debt through defaults or restructurings. Number 3, you can move money from the people who have it to the people who need it, usually through taxes. And the last one, the big one, the central bank can just print money. Every single major deleveraging in history has been some combination of these 4 moves.
The trick is to handle it just right. Dalio calls this a beautiful deleveraging. Now, that doesn't mean it's fun for anyone. It's always painful. It's beautiful like a well-designed machine is beautiful. It means policymakers have to balance the hard stuff, the spending cuts that bring things down, with the inflationary stuff, like printing money. If they can get that mix just right, they can lower the debt burden in an orderly way, without causing a total economic and social collapse. So, okay, we've gone from the tiniest transaction all the way up to a 100-year cycle. We've seen how the whole machine works. So what's the takeaway? What can we do with this? Well, it really all boils down to 3 simple, timeless rules. Rule number 1, don't have your debt grow faster than your income, because eventually that debt will crush you. Rule number 2, don't have your income grow faster than your productivity, because if you do, you'll eventually price yourself out of the market. And rule number 3, do everything in your power to become more productive. And listen, these rules work for you personally, for a company, or for an entire country. And that brings us right back to the beginning, to the most important point of all. The cycles are going to happen. They come and they go. But in the long run, the only thing that really, truly makes our lives better is productivity. That is what matters most. Period.
So there you have it, the economic machine. It's a simple template, but it's an incredibly powerful one for understanding our complicated world. The point isn't to perfectly predict what's going to happen next week. It's about understanding the big forces that are always at play. And that leaves us with one last question for you. Now that you have this template, where do you think we are in the cycle right now?